It's Monday, September 5. In the headlines, Education Ministry says they are focused on quality education. Jamaica achieving milestones in the fight against climate change. In business, a Caribbean national to head CIBC First Caribbean. Regionally in Antigua, the country will see a reduction in gas prices come Wednesday. Internationally, Britain has a new Prime Minister. And in sports, Trinbago Knight Riders claims inaugural women's CPL title. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Minister of Education and Youth, Favour Williams, says her team is focused on executing strategies focused on the quality of education for the nation's students and how to get them to perform at a higher level.
The Education Minister says it is with this in mind that the ministry has procured printed textbook and e-books, and devices have been procured to enhance the teaching and learning experience.
Entering this school year, 8,469 teachers, representing 95% of teachers in our primary schools, have laptops. Our focus now is on providing similar laptops for teachers in our high schools as we seek to encourage the use of technology as an important contributor to the teaching and learning experience.
Minister Williams says efforts are being made to equip all schools with internet. On another note, she says efforts are being made to stem the shortage of teachers due to the increase in resignations.
And already many of our schools have been connected. In dealing with teacher vacancies, we have responded with a number of initiatives to help our school boards and principals in their teacher recruitment efforts. Yes, there have been resignations of some teachers at the start of this new school year. However, many of our schools have reported that they have filled the vacancies or are wrapping up on interviews. We will continue to work with our school boards and principals. We would have communicated many strategies to use, including engaging our retired teachers, especially for those hard-to-fill areas such as geography, history, physics, and other subject areas.
Minister Williams says 1,877 teachers are off on vacation, retirement leave, or study leave.
Our principals have approval to hire back these teachers who will be compensated into the positions. We're also encouraging teachers who are in schools with excess teachers to apply for voluntary relocation to a school in need of teachers. Our regional directors can provide the details of that program.
Reporting for PBCJ News, I'm Raquel Robinson.
The House of Representatives will resume sitting tomorrow at Gordon House. The Houses of Parliament have been on a summer break, but they will be back in action on Tuesday, September 6th. Three significant pieces of legislation to be debated and pass are the JSC's reports on the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulations Act 2022, the JTC Act 2022, and the Delayed New Tobacco Act. Tax Administration of Jamaica wishes to advise the public that the Crossroads Tax Office located in Kingston is reopened for business starting Monday, September 5. The office was temporarily closed last week due to a malfunctioning air conditioning system, which negatively impacted staff and clients. The issue has since been rectified. Taxpayers who visit the location will once again be able to conduct their usual business as operations are restored to normalcy. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Senator Matthew Samuda, says Jamaica has reached a set of milestones in combating climate change issues on the island, in keeping with their 2030 goals.
Jamaica is a member of what's called the High Ambition Coalition, 30 by 30 by 30. Which means we have committed to protecting 30% of our terrestrial land and 30% of our EEZ by 2030. Sounds good. Sounds good. We've just completed, I think, about 25% with the recent declaration of 78,000 hectares of the cockpit country. Something I'm particularly proud of. The truth is we dawdled for 40 years and didn't protect any of it. So really and truly, that's a major step in the right direction.
Minister Samuda notes that almost half of Jamaicans will be significantly impacted by the Hills to Ocean project. The Hills to Ocean project, which was launched on July 19, was designed to increase the country's resilience to the impact of climate change and reduce poverty by protecting livelihoods.
It'll touch approximately 46% of your population in some way, shape, or form. Its impact will be felt by those who don't even know that it exists. And that is a particularly important statement because Kingston and St. Andrew is your most populous region. And in May of 2022, we had 11% of our 30-year average of rainfall. Not 11% below our 30-year average of rainfall. We had 11% of our 30-year average of rainfall. Now, that doesn't mean that you didn't have more erratic rainfall in March and April, but I'm saying that to drive it home that we are in the throes of climate change. It is not future-proofing. It is about survival today.
The minister also commends the European Union, which previously provided the island with $16.5 million to combat the issue of climate change with a heavy focus on forestry.
It is precisely because of that I thank the EU for their commitment of 16.5 million euros earlier in the year that goes to the Consol Fund specifically to help with environmental matters related to forestry. And it is precisely why I thank you for the contribution to this project.
He says that a greater handle on the issue of climate change will in turn assist the island in better coping and managing the long-standing issue of poverty.
It's terribly important because we have to lift our people out of poverty. And if we don't become a center of excellence in environmental management and in the issues related to climate change, we will not lift our people out of poverty. We will be in the perpetual cycle of recovering from disasters. And yes, team at PIOJ and the Ministry of Finance are readying the financial sector. They're creating the fiscal space to allow for the financial response to these disasters. But there's so much more we have to do.
The project is jointly funded with a grant from the European Union Global Climate Change Alliance at $8.5 million, as well as a contribution from the government of Jamaica to the tune of $1.9 million. Representative from the private sector organization of Jamaica's Subcommittee on Security and National Justice, Lieutenant Commander George Overton, says that in order to reduce corruption, the governing heads must inspect and correct issues within their systems. He made this declaration while speaking at the Jamaica Customs Agency's anti-corruption panel discussion on August 31.
To eliminate corruption, you have to start at the top. You identify where it is being breached at the top of your society, and that deal with it properly, and that will filter down to the bottom of your society, that everybody will toe the line. And certainly I believe if we embark on it this way, that certainly we can eliminate or significantly reduce the impact of corruption in our society.
He's calling for public education to bring awareness to these issues and voiced his own observations about faulty process management. In addition to this, he commended the Jamaica Customs Agency, while simultaneously pointing out the roles agencies themselves have in being accountable to anti-corruption measures.
So it is very important that we deal with it, we educate our people, and we constantly review our processes. One of the things that I have always said, and any agency, any activity, once you see delays, you see backlogs, you see bungling, it opens the door of opportunity for corruption. And therefore it is important, and whilst I say it's important, I commend the Customs Agency, because every time I have an interaction with the Customs Agency, it is an improved experience. And therefore, we must continue that drive across all our public sector agencies, constantly review our processes, constantly review the outcomes, and ensure that we are working efficiently, in a timely manner, and certainly eliminating the need for people to deviate the process and introduce corruption to it.
CEO and Commissioner of the Customs Agency of Jamaica, Velma Ricketts Walker, joined the discussion by adding that companies should try to reduce gaps in their systems that could lead to corruption.
when you look at processes, you have to ensure that the window for, and I put opportunity in quotation for corruption, is minimized. And I'm an advocate for automation because what I've noticed is that it allows that visibility, especially when you do the automation right, when you're able to track and trace, when there's the audit trail, there's a timestamp, and the information or the data cannot be overwritten, right? So there's always that trail. But
in the business report, Bank of Jamaica will still be exchanging 20 and 50 pound notes. We have more in this, plus other updates from Danita Rodney.
One-on-One Educational Services Limited led gains on its first day of trading on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. The stock, which trades under the ticker 1, gained 31% to close at $1.31 with about 55,000 units trading. The Bank of Jamaica BOJ says until otherwise advised, it will continue to exchange 20 and 50 pound paper bank notes even as its counterpart in England withdraws the legal tender status of these bills on September 30. The bank says it will continue to follow the usual verification of the authenticity of the notes and customer due diligence as required by the bank's anti-money laundering AML policy and operating procedures. For your market updates, in foreign exchange trading for Friday, September 2, the US dollar sold for an average of $151.82. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $116.19. The pound sterling traded for $176.20, and the euro sold for an average of $154.14. The following reflects the movement of the JSE indices in Friday's trading session. The JSE index declined by 720 points to close at over 300,000 units. The junior market index advanced by 72 points to close at over 4,000 units. The combined market index was stable and closed at over 300,000 units. And the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 347 points to close at over 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 106 stocks, of which 50 advanced, 30 declined, and 17 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Variable Preference, and Access Financial Services Limited. Stocks declined for Caribbean Cement Company Limited, Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited, and Caribbean Producers Jamaica Limited. Trading firm were 1834 Investments Limited, Blue Power Group Limited, and CAC 2000 9.5% cumulative redeemable preference shares. The overall volume leaders were Fosrich Company Limited with over 5 million units, Sagicor Select Funds Limited Financial, and Dollar Financial Services Limited with over 3 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Plico Investment Fund was the only active security posting a volume of 161 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Epley Caribbean Property Fund Development Fund was the volume leader with over 7,000 shares. They were followed by First Caribbean International Bank, which traded 300 shares. In regional business, First Caribbean International Bank Limited has announced the appointment of Mark St. Hill as the next Chief Executive Officer, subject to regulatory approval. He will be the first Caribbean national to hold the post.
First Caribbean International Bank has announced the appointment of Mark St. Hill as its next Chief Executive Officer. St. Hill will assume the post on the 1st of November 2022, following the retirement of the bank's current CEO, Colette Delaney. First Caribbean International Bank also announced an increase of income for the third quarter ended July 31st, 2022. The bank reports net income of $39.8 million, an improvement of the $37.1 million recorded in the same period last year.
In market data for oil prices rose more than $2 a barrel, extending gains as OPEC producers agreed to cut oil output targets by 100,000 barrels per day in October, according to a source. Brent crude futures rose $3.57 to $96.59 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude was up $2.13 at $89. And that was a business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, in Antigua and Barbuda, as of Wednesday, September 7, motorists should see a reduction in gas prices.
The price for each gallon will fall by $1.03. Prime Minister and Finance Minister, the Honorable Gaston Brown, says it's the result of a new rate for imported fuel this week.
There has been a reduction in the price of gasoline by $1, and that we will pass on that reduction in pricing to the Antigua and Barbuda to consumers.
Gasoline prices will now stand at $15.54 per gallon. However, while the cost of imported diesel has increased by 61 cents, the price will remain unchanged as the government will be absorbing the increase. The Prime Minister says the government's revenues have taken a hit with the price fluctuations.
For the last several months, we have not collected a cent in petroleum taxes and consumption taxes on petroleum products because the government has been subsidizing the cost of petroleum products to the tune of over $2 million monthly.
In other news from Antigua, Prime Minister Gaston Brown has expressed concern with the approach being taken by some of the nation's banks. The Prime Minister says they tend to be too conservative to take actions which make doing business difficult.
Instead, these people are sitting down in the banks, refusing to see people, making appointments 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks out. That's nonsense.
Also, the Prime Minister says some banks ask business operators to present plans to open accounts even when businesses aren't seeking loans.
This idea that they're insisting on business plans to open an account, I think they're taking this thing too far, and there's no such requirement in the law. These bankers are bringing requirements into play. That makes no sense.
He also slammed some banks for inappropriate behavior.
Some of these bankers are not confidential either. They are political operatives, and they take information out of the bank and take it into the public domain to create political mischief. That too is unacceptable.
Barbados has already started multiple conversations to shorten the tourism and trade bridge between Africa and the Caribbean. Word of the discussions Barbados has been having with potential airline partners for a direct link between the island and Africa came from Tourism and International Transport Minister, Senator Lisa Cummins. She made the comment during a session at the Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum 2022, which focused on improving logistics between Africa and the Caribbean for the promotion of tourism, trade, telecommunications, and investment. In international news, Liz Truss is officially taking over from Britain's former Prime Minister Boris Johnson this week. 47-year-old Mary Elizabeth Truss has been serving as Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs since 2021 and Minister for Women and Equalities since 2019. A member of the Conservative Party, she has been a Member of Parliament for South West Norfolk since 2010. The Foreign Secretary comfortably beat former Chancellor Rishi Sunak at the keys to number 10, which makes her Britain's 56th PM. The Chinese authorities have initiated another lockdown following a spike in COVID-19 cases, this time in Chengdu, a southwestern city of 21 million people. Photos of empty supermarket shelves and Chengdu residents scrambling to hoard groceries went viral on social media, with the order given only 6 hours before taking effect. More from Al Jazeera.
These are the scenes at a market in Chengdu when Chinese authorities imposed a lockdown this week. Many desperately grabbing what they could before the shelves emptied out. some going to extreme lengths to stock up. 21 million people live here, and on Thursday, 157 of them tested positive for COVID-19. The government says just one case would be enough to hit pause.
Essential services like supermarkets, pharmacies, and hospitals will remain open. Restaurants are only allowed to offer takeaway, and employees of those places should get tested every day. Every household can send one person with a negative test result to do their shopping once a day.
Mass testing means long lines. Even the digital registration system keeps crashing, overwhelmed at the number of daily entries. But testing has to be done for people to be able to bring food back home to their families.
Flights, trains, taxis, and shared bikes are still available for residents. Medical workers and residents who have an urgent need to go out must provide a negative test result taken within 24 hours before using public transportation.
Shanghai and Beijing know all too well what it's like during a complete lockdown. In May, the WHO criticizing the plan to achieve what Beijing calls zero COVID-19 cases in such megacities.
We indicated that the approach, will not be sustainable. And considering the behavior of the virus, I think a shift will be very important.
The empty streets of major Chinese cities are a reminder of the lengths the government is willing to go to stop the pandemic.
In sports, turning to some CPL action following Saturday's match in the men's matchup, Jamaica Talawas remained on top of the standings for a 4-wicket win over Guyana Amazon Warriors. Chasing 143, the Talawas reached the target with a loss of 6 wickets in 19.2 overs. Captain Rovman Powell struck an unbeaten 44 and Brandon King 32. Earlier sent into bat, the Warriors posted 142 for 6 off their allotted 20 overs. Skipper Shimran Hetmeyer led the charge with 39 and Romario Shepherd scored 36. The next match for the men will be Wednesday at 9 a.m. Barbados Royals versus Trinbago Knight Riders, followed by the 6 p.m. match where St. Lucia Kings do battle with the Jamaica Talawas. Matches will be played at the Darren Sammy Cricket Stadium in St. Lucia. Meanwhile, Trinbago Knight Riders women got their revenge for their loss in the 60 by defeating Barbados Royals by 10 runs in the final of the Women's Caribbean Premier League on Sunday night. Captain Deandra Dottin's 59 from 62 balls was a foundation of TKR's 100 for 7 from their 20 overs. Her opposite number, Hayley Matthews, snatching 3 for 22 with her off-spin to keep the Royals in the contest at the halfway stage. In reply, Royals were carried by Matthews, who top scored with 46 from 49 deliveries, but no other player reached double figures as the innings folded for 90 with 8 balls remaining. Jamaica's Reggae Girls improved after the break before going down to a 1-0 defeat against South Korea on Saturday as they gear up for next year's Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. Chu Yuri, 27, scored the only goal of the game in the 13th minute at the sports complex in South Korea to decide the first of 2 friendlies against the Jamaicans. Interim head coach Lorne Donaldson, whose team will face the higher-ranked South Koreans again on Tuesday, said it was important to see how they reacted to a different style of play, which caused them difficulties in adjusting. And that's the news on PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.